Hello, I'm Cynthia Jones, political consultant for the Fair Political Practice Commission. So you've decided to run for office. There's some things you need to know. Let's start with the prohibitions for running your campaign. Restrictions on cash. Contributions and/or expenditures of $100 or more must be made by written instrument and may not be made by or received in cash. Contributions of $100 or more made by money order, cashier's check, or traveler's check are prohibited and must be returned to the contributor or sent to the Secretary of State for deposit in the general fund.
Cash contributions of $100 or more are prohibited. They must be, if it's $100 or more, it must be in writing by check. If it comes by money order or some other form other than cash, it must be returned. This is so that the identification of the contributor is known.
Anonymous contributions also is unlawful. Contributions must identify the true source of its donor. Anonymous contributions of $100 or more are prohibited. If the committee receives a cash contribution of $100 or more from an unknown source, it must be sent to the Secretary of State for deposit into the state's general fund.
It's okay to have a contribution can on a table for a candidate where people come by and put in $5, $10 or something like that, but once it gets up to a significant contribution, which we define as $100, you need to identify who it came from.
Money laundering is definitely the foundation of the Political Reform Act. It is because of money laundering that we exist. Contributions can be made through intermediaries, but they must show the true source of that contribution. If a contribution of $100 or more is received from a single source in a calendar year, the source must be identified. If a contribution is received through an intermediary, both the intermediary and the true source of the contribution must be identified. If the true source of a contribution is not identified, it is a violation of the Political Reform Act, commonly known as money laundering.
We have a restriction against laundered funds because we have contribution limits. And if we don't have a restriction against laundered funds, people will just give their money to someone else and have them make the contribution and get around the contribution limits. Let's say the contribution limits are $1,000 and I've given $1,000, but I want to give $10,000. I find 9 people and give them each $1,000 and tell them to make this contribution in your name, and they say, okay. Then I just got around the contribution limits of $1,000 by laundering the funds, and that's prohibited and that's wrong.
Commingling is against the law. It is a prohibition to commingle campaign funds with personal funds, anyone's personal funds, with other committees. Campaign funds may not be commingled with any individual's personal funds and may not be used for personal expenses. Campaign funds must be kept in an account separate from any account which contains personal funds. Campaign credit cards are also subject to the commingling prohibition and may not be used for personal expenses. Contributions of $100 or more must be itemized. It is the law. For contribution aggregating $100 or more from the same source, including loans and in-kind contributions, you must disclose the contributor's name, address, occupation, and employer. If this information is not received within 60 days of the date you received the contribution, you must return the contribution. We here at the FPPC are available to help you run a successful campaign by answering any questions that you might have related to your committee and campaigning.